an idiot sandwich.
Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Maker. So the way that I've been trying to organize my projects is doing them two at a time, listing them here on this chalkboard. However, once in a while, my wife will come to me and ask me to start on another project of her choosing. Most of the time, these projects are for gifts for friends and family, like the memory boxes. Those were for some family members. And this time, my wife wants me to make a charcuterie board for my brother-in-law, her brother. He's getting married, so that's why I'm doing it. Anyways, what this will do is just put a pause on the main projects that I'm working here, and I will focus on this small gift project in the meantime. This happens often enough where I think I should make a YouTube series about this. I think I'll call it Doing What My Wife Wants, or the Honey-Do Projects. And usually what happens is my wife comes to me and asks, hey, can you do this simple thing? Maybe you can just throw these boards together and call it a charcuterie board. I like to complicate things, and I usually don't like to go with the basic idea. So I took part of her idea, which was to use some of this old shadua wood. Anyways, I used this wood to build a huge round table, which you see here. And I've hung on to all the leftover pieces for a while, and now I'm going to use it to make this charcuterie board. Now, I probably could have thrown some of these boards together and called it good. However, in keeping it complicated, I decided that I would rip these boards to thinner pieces and then join them back together in a more unique pattern. I like using templates, and right now I'm going to draw this pill shape that I want to use on this piece of cardboard. Like I mentioned before, I want to organize these pieces of wood for a more unique design, and I'm going to center these pieces diagonally against this template. This template is going to help me make sure that I am cutting all of these pieces long enough to fit essentially the shape that I want to cut out in the end. As I'm organizing these pieces of wood, I am purposefully setting them on the side in which I cut the pieces of wood. In the end, this side of the grain is essentially going to bring out much more of the iridescence of the wood. So after placing all the pieces where I want, I'm going to draw this squiggly line to keep track of the order that they were in. Because of the placement of some of these pieces of wood, it makes it awkward to clamp everything all together at once. So I'm going to do it in stages. I'm going to clamp a few here, a few there, and eventually just have about 3 or 4 pieces where I can clamp it together. Now, as everything is drying, I'm going to make use of this cardboard template and transfer it to a piece of MDF. Eventually, I want to use this MDF template to use a router to trim out the shape that I want on my finished piece. Now that everything is glued together, I'm going to use this plane to get rid of the dried glue so that I have something flat to work with. So I want a very rough outline of the piece before I use the router, and so I'm going to use that cardboard template to do just that. Here I'm using my small circular saw and my jigsaw to cut out that rough shape. So now after cutting it to rough dimensions, I'm going to use the plane again just to smooth things out even more. So here's where that MDF template is going to come in handy. I'm going to put it on one end and I'm going to use this trim router bit to shape out the edge that I want. I'm going to flip the MDF piece over and then do the other side. And now I'm going to make another attempt at making an inlay. If you watched my second memory box video, you'll know that I did my first inlay in that video. I think I've learned quite a few things, so I'm hoping that this inlay is going to turn out a lot better. Their last name starts with P, and so that's what I'm going to inlay into this piece. I chose this design, printed it out, and I'm going to use a piece of jacaranda wood for this inlay. The same wood that I used as those two highlights that you see within the piece. And funny enough, this jacaranda wood was actually a tree that I cut down from my backyard a long time ago. If you're watching this video and you think he seems to be having trouble with his scroll saw, that's because I am. It's the first time I ever used one. Nevertheless, I was able to take away most of the material with the scroll saw. I then used this disc sander to work on some of the edges. From there, I'm going to use various files to shape this piece as closely as possible to the lines of the letter. Now I'll use some double-sided tape to help me hold the inlay piece to the board, while I scroll along the edges with a knife and a pencil. Instead of starting on the edges first like the last time I did an inlay, I will use my router with a 1/8 bit to remove the material from the inside while coming as close to the edges as possible. I then use various chisels to shave off the edges of the design. Overall, I think this made for a much tighter and neater inlay.
Get out of there. Don't want to break you. Come on, please. Oh.
The inlay was actually so tight that I had to use a C-clamp to press it in.
That's a lot of glue. I took it there a little too far there, bud. With the glue.
Now that the inlay is essentially done, I am going to use some epoxy, something relatively new to me, to fill in some of these gaps in the jacaranda wood. With the color of this wood, I thought that copper would go best. Now I'm going to use a belt sander to sand away the epoxy and the top of the inlay. And you can see the inlay turned out really well. I don't see any gaps. I'm very happy with it. Now I'm going to use a round over bit with my router to round over the edges. And from there, I'm going to use my orbital sander to sand through various grits until I get to 400. Very smooth. And for the finish, because I want this to be food safe, I'm just using mineral oil. And of course, after putting the oil on, this is where the grain of the wood really comes to life, and holy cow, I really did not expect that much chatoyancy. The chatoyancy is strong with this one.
You've arrived at your destination.
So yeah, here it is. It's finished. And like most of the projects that my wife has me do, I end up liking them the most. For one thing, they don't take very long, and because I don't really have expectations of how I want it to turn out, I just go with the flow, and most of the time that brings out my creativity. And I just couldn't be happier with this charcuterie board. And my brother-in-law likes it, so I like it.